if you're not actively, forcibly working towards your own goals, you're going to be, by default, unconsciously used as a tool to accomplish somebody else's goals. Negativity tends to be contagious. And part of the reason why you see so much negativity online is because most people are ignorant to just about most subjects. Most people don't know that much about a lot of different subjects. They're only focused on, a few things that they've learned in their life, and everything else they just have a vague knowledge of it. And when they're exposed to some kind of negative viewpoint or comment or perception of a particular thing, and they don't know anything about that particular thing other than those negative comments, then the anchoring bias kicks into effect, and they tend to absorb that negative perception, because there's a lot of what you feel and what you think about things is your perception of it. So you can have a different perception and see something totally different. So if you know a little bit more about a subject, you'll perceive it differently. But if you're ignorant on the subject, or you're mostly ignorant on a particular subject, then you're exposed to the negativity, and then you could potentially absorb that and retain that as your perception is tainted by that negative association. So the anchoring bias is basically whatever you're exposed to first, you tend to have that viewpoint, and it's hard to get rid of it. Like, it anchors you in that first impression, like first impressions are lasting impressions. So that's part of the reason why negativity is so contagious online, is because people tend to absorb that negative perception, and then they repeat that negative perception because now they see it as their point of view, and when it wasn't, it wasn't even their point of view. They don't even have enough information to accurately assess that statement or whatever. But since that is, the Dunning-Kruger effect comes into effect, where you think you have the ability to do something when you don't. The more ignorant you are on a subject, the more you tend to overestimate your abilities to understand it. And then the more you dig into it, you realize, wow, this is a lot more complex than I thought. And then you learn more about it, and then you realize that, oh, well, yeah, my knowledge was just so limited, and we all kind of know that. If you really think about it, you kind of think about it and try to understand. Most people don't try to understand that. They just don't really have that much time to dig into everything. That's why everybody remains ignorant on most every subject. But and this is why it's very important to guard your autonomy. Guard your autonomy. You have to actively guard your autonomy, because everything you're exposed to can, if you're not guarding your own personal autonomy, can kind of hijack your perceptions, hijack your will, hijack your time, hijack your entire life if you allow it. There's so much abundance of knowledge and information and facts and perceptions, and now that most people get all that information online, where it's just a mixed bag of just craziness and confirmation biases and all kinds of different biases going on. If you're not aware of what cognitive biases are, then that's the first step of just kind of understanding what the common pitfalls that our brain tend to fall for. So if you have to actively, that's the first step of to be active in guarding your own autonomy as an individual, not a person who's just like an NPC meme or whatever, or just like an unthinking person that's going along with the herd. You have to evaluate things, and the only way for you to evaluate things for yourself is to understand your own self in addition to the subject you're evaluating. So you have to understand your own self, and cognitive biases are a way of understanding the psychology of your brain, right? So happiness is not exclusive to you. Sadness is not exclusive to you. that's a shared common feeling that other people have. So just like fear and different emotions are not exclusive to you. You're not the first person with those things. So while cognitive biases are the way your brain tends to work just as a biological adaptation, that there's times in which they can trip you up in a modern, social environment when you're exposed to information. So it's like you can learn about those pitfalls. They're very common. They're very easy to sidestep, to understand. You just have to take the time to go through, the cognitive biases. Anchoring is one. There's psychological projection. There's all kinds of different, like a false consensus bias. Where you think everybody agrees with you, that kind of thing. There's a lot of different biases that are just very important to understand. So that way you can understand yourself, because you are a human being, and human beings have common characteristics. And once you understand, you see those things in your own self, and you're able to somewhat compensate for those common pitfalls, then you start to see that the great many other people are falling for those common pitfalls, and it causes a lot of division. It causes a lot of negativity, where people are coming in a positive situation and tainting it with negative associations. So actively guarding your autonomy in general, like if you don't allow yourself to be exposed to whatever's in front of you. It's kind of like not eating everything that's put in front of you. You have to have some kind of limits on what you're exposed to. Then if it does get past your limits, then you have to have the ability to filter out, what is important, what's not important. And then even within what's important, you have to, filter out that once again to see how relative it is to your life and your immediate needs, because your time and your energy and your focus can get hijacked and get derailed. One of the things that's common, first person I heard say this was Grant Cardone, where if you're not actively working towards your own goals, then by default, you're going to be hijacked and work towards accomplishing somebody else's goals. That's just what tends to happen. If you're not busy doing your own goals, you're not actively forcing yourself to go aggressively towards your own goals, you're just going to get hijacked by somebody else, and you're going to accomplish their goals instead. So, and then people are just blissfully unaware of it, and then they get late in life and they realize there's so many opportunities, and so much time they've wasted, so much energy they put into the wrong direction. It's like, how did that happen? How did I get in this situation in which, the things that I wanted to do that I easily could have done, I just didn't do them because I was busy doing all these other things in a million different directions and not focused in the right direction, because you got hijacked because you weren't guarding your own autonomy, guarding your own energy, guarding your own focus, and staying on task for the things that benefit you and your life and your family and everybody else. So that's the thing. When you undermine your own self, you're also, if you have a family, undermining your own family by doing these things. So it's extremely important for long-term generational harm or generational benefit. It happens when you guard your autonomy. Very, very important subject. It's something that a lot of people talk around this particular subject, but they're not actually nailing the center. They talk about, there's a lot of negativity, and there's quote misinformation or whatever, all this stuff out there that people are exposed to, and it's causing all these problems. It's like, well, you have to start with yourself, because a lot of the people that are recognizing the problem, they don't understand what the solution is. And the solution is for individuals to be autonomous in ourselves, be a individual that's able to stand on our own 2 feet and be able to evaluate what we're exposed to, what to do and what not to do, how to perceive things. Because if you think it's the end of the world, right? If you have the perception that it's the end of the world, how hard are you going to, like next week or next year or 20 years or whatever, how hard are you going to work on a particular task or a particular career? It's like, well, it's the end of the world. Why bother with focusing on a 20-year goal when the end of the world is 20 years, right? Long-term goals, you start to get very short-sighted if you have that perception, if you adopt that perception that you inherited from somebody else. These perceptions, like I said, you're born into a world where everything's already there, and it's what you allow to absorb into your perception and your way of seeing the world. Your worldview can be shifted hugely, left, right, up, down, and there's constant other people constantly trying to push and pull and pry and just completely steamroll you all over the place. So you have to be very shielded and guard your autonomy as an individual, as a real person that's going to have the skills to evaluate information. That's the thing. If you don't know how to evaluate, then you're a slave to whatever information just happens to get in front of you. You don't know how to evaluate it, So therefore, you have to actively do things. It's not enough to just shield yourself and just not look at anything. You have to be exposed to the world. So what you do is you learn to evaluate, learn about yourself, learn about psychology, learn about the different subjects. If you're exposed to a particular subject or a particular topic or whatever, positive or negatively, then you kind of have to back off from coming to a conclusion. There's a lot of people that are constantly saying, I came to the conclusion this and that. They don't know anything about the subject typically. It's just they're just coming to a conclusion, like the end. They're 100% sure that whatever it is that they're exposed to is true or false or whatever, right? But they don't know anything about the subject, but they're spreading around as if they do. And part of that is that they want to, and part of the negativity is that they want to raise their status a little bit by pretending that they know something so much that they came to a conclusion, or that they are certain, confident in their perception and their take on that particular subject or that particular thing. So yeah, it makes you feel like, I know something that other people don't, and I'm special in some way, Because a lot of people, especially it's kind of hard to be really specialized in a particular advanced subject. Let's say you're a physicist or whatever, right? If you're focused on watching sports all day long and drinking beer and doing a lot of things that are not focused on learning how to be a physicist, the chances of you in your lifetime, 2 lifetimes, you're never going to become a physicist, because there's so much to focus on as a physicist. You have to exclude a lot of nonsense stuff that's not aligned with that goal, So most people, and also, let's say you're a physicist, the chances of you being highly skilled as a plumber, is unlikely. You have to really dig into and focus on and practice and understand and make all the mistakes and all that stuff. No matter what the subject is, it takes a lot of effort and focus in that direction. So yeah, as a autonomous person, as a person who's not just a domino, a sheep following other people, you have to guard your autonomy in order to, and also that solves a lot of problems. Like if you solve your own problems, another quote that I heard, the best way to help a person in need is not be a person in need. If you're a person in need, if you are ignorant, and you can't do anything, then you're constantly needing other people to do stuff for you, So if you don't know about a subject, you kind of have to outsource your perception of that to somebody who does know something about the subject. Well, there's a lot of people pretending to know about the subject when they really don't, and it's really easy to get swept up in that and believe that you're being informed when you're not. But anyways, that's another, just trying to hit it from a different direction as far as how important it is to guard your autonomy. Thank you for watching.